Welcome to the Westport Library. Today's program will begin momentarily. Supported by Verso Studios, created locally and shared with the world.
Hello, everybody. My name's Carol Erger-Fass, and I'm exhibit curator here at the library. And I want to welcome everybody to tonight's celebration. 3 great exhibits: Nina Bentley's Good Bones, Susan Fehlinger's City Sights, and Jean Krasno's Art and Jazz. One of the most fun parts of my job as a curator is visiting artist studios. Putting Nina's retrospective together, I got to visit her Westport home and studio twice. Although I did visit one other time, but that was during COVID, so it was through Zoom. Nina actually agreed to be one of our first artists in residences when we did it during COVID. And you can still see it on the website. It was one of our earlier ones, if you don't mind a little shaky camera work. Nina's studio is pretty much what you would imagine. It's filled with the most interesting and unusual things, many of which end up in her assemblages. Where does she find all these things? Skulls and bones and doll parts, pieces of musical instruments, and art. Lots of art, both of her own making, but also works by many of her artist friends, of whom she's a great supporter. In fact, Nina, along with Miggs, is a founding member of the Artist Collective of Westport and has been an integral part of Westport's thriving art scene. Putting this together, I've come to understand that Nina blends her various life experiences into her art, which she describes as multi-dimensional social commentary. She says it helps her gain some perspective on the world while also retaining her sense of humor. Her work has been exhibited in galleries and museums locally, nationally, and throughout Europe, and is in the permanent collection of the New Britain Museum of Art and collections throughout the US and abroad. Susan Fehlinger works out of Metro Art Studios in Bridgeport, an old corset factory that's home to about 30 other artists. Known mostly for her textural compositions of rural and coastal scenes that play with form and structure and shadow, she created these new canvases just for city sites. I wonder if working in an old factory building was a bit of an inspiration for her. And it's hard to believe, even if you look really closely at her paintings, that Susan paints exclusively with a palette knife. She says she loves the spontaneity and the happy accidents that occur working with a knife. And she also added that she never has to clean any brushes. Susan's a member of the Artist Collective as well, and also Silvermine Art Center, Ridgefield Art Guild, Rowayton Art Center, and others. And last but not least, if you Google Jean Krasno, the first hits you come up with are Columbia University and City College of New York, where she's both a lecturer and a professor of political science. You'll also find that she's the author of several academic books and journals and papers, and 2 novels. Keep reading, and you'll find that this is in addition to having completed a BFA from University of Illinois, an MFA in painting from Stanford, a PhD in international politics from the city of New York. Turns out that while making art was always part of Jean's life, her concern for world issues led her also to a career in international relations. In Art and Jazz, Jean combines torn paper, oil pastels, pencil, and pieces of ripped prints to capture the magic of the melodies and lyrics of jazz songs. I hope you have an opportunity to listen to the musical inspiration for each of her pieces. You can scan QR codes that are on the labels. To call her a multifaceted individual is an understatement. And how she can find the time to create these beautiful collages is just one of the things we need to find out about tonight. Thanks to all who make this possible, including our great art committee, the Verso media team, and of course, Miggs Burroughs for moderating tonight's discussion. Enjoy.
Where are you sitting? Miggs.
Well, I'll start by thanking everyone for being here and giving a little explanation. This is a little different because usually I interview or have a conversation with one, maybe two artists at the most, so this is kind of unusual. So what we're gonna do is, we'll see how this works. When I press the button, the slides are they're gonna be alternating slides from each artist, up for about 20 seconds each. So we're not going to specifically talk about each slide. One may come up that we want to talk about, but the idea is we're going to have a conversation in general, and this work will just, you'll see the work from both artists just appearing on the screen. I do want to thank the library, Bill Harmer's vision of embracing the arts at the library here, and unsung hero, Carol Ergerfoss, who just spoke, who's an amazing curator and spends untold hours, designing the walls. These things just don't fly up there on their own and find a nice place to sit. And there's an exhibit committee too, sort of unsung heroes. And if I don't leave anyone out, I'm gonna mention them because they rarely get mentioned. So there's Joan Miller, Mary Ellen Hendricks, Anne Levine, Catherine Ross, and Ellen Naftalin. Did I leave anybody out? I don't think so. So that's how this work gets put up and displayed the way it does. It's not magic, it's what is magical sometimes. But anyway, so as an opening question, I thought maybe a little behind the scenes look. I'll start with Susan. How did you end up here at the library in this exhibit? What's the process? I mean, who did you contact them? Did they contact you? Who picked your work?
Oh, well.
Yeah, microphone.
Do I have to turn this on?
It's on.
Hello?
Yep.
Oh.
Just keep it.
I have to thank Carol Ergerfoss, who found me. I don't know how she found my work, but she got in touch with me, and I think she noticed some of my new work, which was this more urban thing. I've been doing other more kind of coastal work for many years when I lived on Cape Cod, and I had a show here just before the library closed, before the renovation, and that was a whole different kind of thing. So she invited me to put some pieces up on the South Gallery, which I thank her for.
What was the selection process? Easy, or did you have to? I mean, you've done so much work. How did you?
Well, I wanted to show my newer work, which is what's there now. I have been doing, as I said, this coastal kind of, groovy little nice work, and I wanted to do this more industrial, urban kind of a look that I've been going for lately, and she responded to that. So I sent her a few pieces, and she said, okay, that's it.
Jean, do you want to explain briefly how you got here? How your work got here and what work, how it was chosen?
Yes, so Carol got in touch with me as well. And I had been in a couple of group shows here. And I had shown some of my jazz pieces at that time. One was Foggy Day in London Town, and which is a collage as well. And also Billie Holiday, Some Other Spring. And I think when she was putting this together, she liked the idea of combining artwork with music. And so that's how she contacted me again and asked me to send a bunch of slides of my work. And then she selected the ones which was really fun, the way she selected them, because it turns out they're my favorites. So she really got into my head about the work, and I really appreciate that. That's been really fun.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting just people to know how this happened. So Nina, I know a little bit about the process because I was involved in a little bit with a visit with Carol to your house. So, and you have, well, how was all that? I mean, you have what, 60 years of work to go through?
Yeah, well, I started working when I was about 23, 24. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. And so I had all this work, and part of me thought, well, I'll just bring it all in and decide where it should go. But Carol came to my house, and she picked out everything. She took a photo here, a photo there, a photo here, and it was really pretty special that she made it all happen, and I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do was figure out a title for the different pieces. But I'm feeling very, very pleased about the whole experience. Really feels good to have work that I did almost 60 years ago. Yes.
What's the most recent? The trays or the shoe?
I think that silver tray, which is called entitled as opposed to untitled. And I've sold a fair amount of those. And then the 2 typewriters, one of them is in LaGuardia Airport in the Delta Skylab, and another one is in Kennedy Airport. And that's thanks to Lisa Cooper, who I think is here.
She was, but she had to leave early.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so I'm very, very, very pleased to see the whole array of my work.
So Susan, you've been, I think most people would know your work from this, Cape Cod series or general, New Englandy stuff, charming houses and scenes, docks, and so and now the change, it's not on now, but people have seen it, these sort of cityscapes and these more gritty scenes. Was there something, was that just a deliberate choice or something in your life just turned a switch and you went there?
Well, for one thing, I moved from Cape Cod to Bridgeport. Oh. So that was a move that a few people thought was kind of odd. But what the truth is that I had lived in New York City for 35 years when I had my career. And when I quit in a huff and moved to Cape Cod, I started painting, and I painted what was around me at the time. And Edward Hopper was my hero, and he also lived in New York and Cape Cod. And I loved the way he captured the light. And I did those kind of little cottagey, watery things for many years, and I still like doing them. But when I moved to Bridgeport, I kind of became enamored again with the whole urban. I was looking for, first of all, Cape Cod is so very nice, and I was looking for something a little grittier and a little more interesting and a little more angular. I love doing architecture. I paint everything with a knife, so it's easy to make nice straight lines. And it was easy to slip into that kind of urban industrial thing. I painted a bunch of power plants, which many don't find beautiful, but I think when the light hits them right, they're kind of cool. So yeah, I switched over to this whole industrial series, and that's where I'm at right now.
And Jean, I don't know if Jean's work is over there, if you haven't seen it already, and there's a little QR code next to each piece, and if you aim your phone at it, it will bring you to the music that this piece. So does the music come first and you go, oh, I have to create a piece about this, or do you create a piece and go, now I have to find a piece of music that fits? I mean, what's your...
No, I have the lyrics and the music first. But I started it because I have 3 sons, and my 2 older sons are musicians. And one of my sons, Eric Krasno, you may have heard him play, he performs in New York and all over the place. And it was a way of connecting with them because I'm not a musician, you know. I'm a visual artist, but there's, you know, there is a connection. So it started out that I decided that I wanted to connect it to music. And then I just listened to, I have always listened to a lot of jazz, and I have some albums that I particularly love. And so when the lyrics really tell a story, then I can get into it and I can visualize, you know, what the lyrics are.
Are you listening to the music when you're creating?
Yes, yes. So I play.
You immerse yourself in it.
Yeah, so I play the music over and over again. I get into the feel of it and the beat of it, and, you know, hope that I can capture that rhythm.
Now, you have a PhD in political science, but I mean, your work is very layered and deep, but you've avoided the opportunity to make any overt political statements in your work, or have you? I mean, are there?
No, I don't make political statements in my work, but as long as you have given me this opportunity, I realized the other day that I had a show in Westport once before. And the way it came about is for various reasons. I went to a psychic, and I wanted a reading, and I asked him a few things. He told me, and he said, "But you haven't told me anything about yourself." And I said, "Well, I'm an artist and I haven't shown in a while." And he looked at me and he said, "You will go to Westport. You will get coffee." And I thought, okay, Oscars, I'll go get coffee at Oscars. "You will walk down Main Street. You will walk down the post road and you will find an empty storefront. And you will have a show there for 3 weeks and it will be very successful."
It's very specific.
I mean, I know, and it took me a while to say, okay, I'm gonna do this. And so I went to Oscars, I got my coffee, I walked down Main Street, and then right at the corner of Main Street and the Post Road was an empty storefront. That's where Tiffany's is now. But it was next to the Ships. I don't know how many of you have been around for a long time where the Ships was. So I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know now what to do. I'm supposed to have a show here. And I went to talk to Mark in the Ships.
Yeah, Mark Kaufman.
Yeah, and I said, you know, apparently you have this space. Could I have an art show there? He said, yeah, that's okay, because I can't move into it yet because I don't have enough parking. So he said, but you can have it for 2 weeks. And I thought, well, the psychic said 3 weeks. So, well, okay. And he didn't charge me anything. And so I had the opening reception dinner at the Ships. And Mark came up to me at the reception. He said, if you let me come in for 1 day and fix the floor, I'll give you another week. I said, okay, 3 weeks. There we did it.
Well, that's a great, Nina, where was your first
That's a
exhibit?
different story.
Nina, do you remember your very first, when you felt like I'm an artist, like, look, there, my work's on the wall? When did that happen? Do you remember?
That's a question.
Yeah, when's your first exhibit?
When was my first?
Or where was your first exhibit? Switzerland, Germany?
Holy moly. I had no preparation for this question.
Oh, okay. When was your last exhibit?
My first exhibit. But I wanted to mention something about a picture that was up there of the knives with the photographs on it. I was on the board of the Westport Art Center, and we were having a photography show. And I said, well, let's ask Dave so-and-so. He's pretty good. Oh, no. I said, well, how about let's ask this. Anyway, they kept saying no to everything, and I finally said, you know, you want to see cutting-edge photography? I'll show you cutting-edge photography. And it was in a silver mine show, and I won an award. And the photographers were all livid, and they didn't like me, but gee, I'm going to go home tonight and try to remember when my first show was.
Okay, well, maybe that's too, but what was it, you were a painter early on, right?
Well,
because some of the work in there, the earliest work
Yeah.
is paintings.
Yeah, like that red room. I used to be a painter. A lot of my work depended upon where I lived. We lived all over in Switzerland and Italy and Germany. And if I had a big space, I could paint. If I had a small space, I had to do pen and ink. So it really, ooh. That was done for a show on gun control. That's in my living room right now. I love seeing all these pictures.
Yeah, great. They're not all in the show. I mean, some are in the show and some aren't, which we just try to mix it up.
Yeah.
But so Susan, I'm curious. Everybody's had, you know, an artists aren't just always artists. They do other things. You owned a bed and breakfast, right?
For about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Were you an artist at the time, or did that propel you into being an artist?
No, I had a career in New York, and I quit in a huff and moved to Cape Cod and bought a bed and breakfast. And if anybody is thinking about doing that, talk to me first. It was difficult at best. I had, well, I won't go into it, but I did it for 5 years, and the good thing about it was that I also created a series of artist workshops, and I got a bunch of Cape Cod artists to teach at my bed and breakfast, and we did workshops, 2- and 3-day workshops, so I got connected to the art scene on the Cape that way, and my dream was to start painting. That was why I moved there, and what happened is when you have a bed and breakfast, you really have no time to paint. So when I finally sold it 5 years later, I started painting in 2003. It was the year my mom died, and she was an artist, and I started painting as a way to connect with her. And I painted like a madwoman that whole winter as a kind of cathartic thing. I discovered the palette knife, and I made these big, giant paintings of fruits and vegetables that I would go to Stop and Shop and get whatever's on sale, and put a light on it and paint it. And it was, that was how I started. And kind of went on from there.
It's amazing with the variety of, I mean, if you look at Susan's work closely and think about the palette knife, you know, it's a sharp-edged little sort of elongated triangle, right?
Yeah.
Like a little mini spatula
Yeah.
with a foot. But, you know, the variety of strokes, you know, there's very thin, you know, you can define a very straight, thin line. How do you do that? You put a little paint on the edge of it and just make a line? Or, I mean, it's amazing.
Well, that's one way. There's a lot of way to use the knife, actually. And if you take my class, you can learn this. But it's, you know, you can use the edge. You can, it's a little bit of a wrist breaker, but you can get a rounded corner. It's very good for blending. It's a great tool. There's a lot of ways to use it, so.
And Jean, oh, I'm sorry, did you have?
I remembered my first show. It was at Park Slope, and it was a flower show. And I did some paintings of flowers, and this friend of mine, who's still a friend of mine, and she's at Silver Mine now, she said, "Nina, you're copying me." I said, "Copying you? Are you kidding? I'm copying Renoir, I'm copying you." But that was my first show.
Thank you
at Park Slope.
Thank you. So,
Now I can sleep.
and Jean, your process, like, it's a lot of collage, it's painting, do you have like a, you know, the artist, I think some artists call it a morgue, where they put all, you know, found scraps in, and I mean, do you have a collection of, what is your source material, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I do have a collection of torn up stuff. But I used to do a lot of lithography. And when you do lithography, you end up with proofs that you can't really use. They have a flaw here or there. And, but then they're all printed on this gorgeous paper, you know, 100% rag, thick paper. And you have these colors and textures. And so I decided, hey, you know, I've got this resource. And then I also, I don't know if you know Jim Reed, but,
Yeah,
okay.
printmaker,
Yeah, printmaker. And he used to have a studio in Bridgeport. And I went up there with him and for a couple of days and had him print colored paper for me. So we inked up the stone with all kinds of different colors because I wanted some bigger pieces and brighter colors. And so we printed about 60 big, pieces of color paper. And then I use those and tear them up because I like the ragged edge with the white of the paper showing. And, but then, to get a little more detail in, I use pencil and colored, oil pastels to blend and, make the images.
And I'm curious, well, Susan mentioned teaching, and we'll get to your class, but I'm asking Nina, you've taught at Norwalk Art Space. Do you want to just describe who you teach and what that's about?
Well, I taught a class in assemblage art for young kids at Norwalk Art Space, and I also taught in Bridgeport at Homes for the Brave, a group of homeless veterans, and that was very, very satisfying. So I taught there, and yeah.
And how do you teach assemblage? I mean, how do you even approach it? These are young kids.
Well, you teach assemblage by bringing in a whole bunch of stuff, putting it all out on the table, and telling people to get started. And get started and put it together. And I bought birdhouses, small birdhouses, to these homeless veterans, and I thought, oh, they're really going to make fun of me because this is so babyish, but they had a great time with airplanes and bombs, and it was really a very elaborate process of creativity. It was a lot of fun. My main advice to young people who want to become artists is to marry a banker. That's the best way to do it.
Actually, I like the advice for any artist, just get started. That's just great. That should be a name of a book. So Susan, do you teach beginners? Do you teach totally ranked beginners like that never put paint to canvas? Or are these people that are struggling with a technique? I mean, who do you teach?
Well, you taught at Homes for the Brave.
Yes, I taught there too. Mm-hmm. That was very gratifying. That was rewarding. And there were some really talented veterans that really had no idea they had that talent till they tried. And then they were so encouraged. They did some beautiful work. So that was really fun. Thank you, Nina, for getting me involved with that. I'm teaching down in Rowayton now, and it's mostly, right now, it's artists who kind of are already kind of know how to paint. And my class is called Making It Your Own, and it's about developing your own style and trying to push the envelope. We mostly paint from photographs, but I'm encouraging them to, change it up, make it theirs, make it interesting, play with color, zoom in, focus, play with composition. So they know how to paint, but we're trying to take it to the next step.
Yeah, especially if they've only used brushes, because that's got to be kind of a transition, right? I mean, its technique is a lot. I mean, you could be inspired, but you still have to make the mark. Yeah,
well, I'm trying to encourage them to be brave. And, go for it. It's only paint.
Yeah, you're not going to break anything.
Yeah, you got to try.
So, Jean, you want to talk about your book. I mean, you're multifaceted, as Carol mentioned. I mean, poet. There's a beautiful poem dedicated to Greta Thunberg over there. You should read that Jean wrote, and she's an author of several books. So what's this one about?
Okay, so actually what I was just thinking, this book brings together my political science and my artwork and storytelling, because all my artwork has always been about telling some kind of story. So I had lived in Brazil, and I just wrote my doctoral dissertation on Brazilian politics. And so I decided, instead of doing an academic thing, about it, that I would create some characters and make them live it. And so that's what happened here. And it has different facets to it. And then I did the artwork for the cover. So, yeah, so it brings together political science, the artwork for the cover, and storytelling.
And what's the general, is it a drama? Is it a...
It's a murder mystery.
Murder mystery? Oh, okay.
Yeah, people who like murders.
Oh, just like real politics.
Like halfway through it, I said, oh, you know, and Chris, my husband's here, he remember that halfway through it, I thought, oh my God, I have to kill somebody else. You know, there has to be another murder. It's like, you know, Midsummer Murders, you've got to have a few murders. And because there was a murder in the opening chapter and, you know, a couple other murders. So I had to create, I didn't want to kill any of my characters, my main characters. So I had to create a new character and then have her murdered.
Murder on demand.
Murder on demand, yeah. But it's really about Brazil's transition from a military dictatorship into a democracy, which was a very, you know, tentative, tense time. And the military had been creating a secret program to develop a nuclear weapon. And that was really what my dissertation was about, you know, uncovering this secret nuclear weapons program. So that is the thread that goes through the story. And then a parallel story is about a young boy who's 9 years old who gets caught and kidnapped by a gang of street children and forced to go begging on the street. And then this person who kidnapped him is a Macumba priest. So then it tells the whole story of how Macumba is an alternative religion in Brazil, how it works, how street children get caught up in these gangs. And then the two stories merge at the end.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, Carol even asked in her, you know, how do you find the time?
It's in the library here.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So you can take it.
It's called Secrets and the Disappeared, A Tale of Brazil. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's called Secrets and the Disappeared, A Tale of Brazil. And I don't know if you have followed Brazilian or Argentine politics, but a lot of the opposition were picked up in the middle of the night and they were disappeared. And so that plays into it too.
Again, a more little cheerful subject. Susan, some people, would you want to talk about Metro Arts and what, for anybody who doesn't know what Metro Arts is and what goes on there and how many artists are there? And
Yeah, Metro Arts is a renovated factory in Bridgeport that is now artist studios. There are 36 artists working there on 3 stories. It's a wonderful old 1900 built brick building and beautiful spaces, amazing renovation job. And you should come by and see us like when we have open studios, which are pretty widely announced. It's fun to walk through and see everybody's work. I feel very lucky to have a space there. I used to paint on my 6x12 porch off the kitchen. So this is like luxurious, and I can do bigger work, and I love the community of it. So yeah, it's a good place.
And to give the Artist Collective equal time, Nina, do you want to describe what, for anyone who doesn't know, what the Artist Collective is and why it is that you helped found? Remember the Artist Collective?
What? You want to talk about what?
The Artist Collective, would you like to describe what it is as an organization?
Oh, well, we're 150 artists. We're pretty local because you have to come to the meetings. We have one once a month. Miggs and I were one of the original founders, and we've been around for 10 years. We have a meeting once a month. I don't think we've ever missed a meeting. And so it's like 100 meetings, 150 artists. And it's a pretty wonderful, wonderful group of supporters, a group of friends. Susan is in it, and she's one of the leaders.
Jean's Jean's
And you're
a
in it
member.
too. No, it's pretty wonderful. We have art shows where we pick 15 artists. They each have about 8 feet of space. And then they pick the next artist for the next show. And I'll bet you in this room, there are probably 10, 15, 20 members. Miggs is a member. Raise your
Lucy's a
hand.
member, Lynn's a member. Oh,
See, there are
good.
people here that, it's a wonderful group. We're very supportive and
Another wonderful thing is the library has partnered with us, again, thanks to Bill Harmer and Carol. So for the past 3 years, I think, they let us, the collective, literally take over all the library's exhibit space with a group show of all our members' work. And that's usually in the gallery where Nina is now, and then on the wall, on the entry wall where Susan's work is now. And then on this wall, we have a thing called Piece by Piece, which Susan, maybe you better explain it since you initiated it. What is Piece by Piece? You want to talk about how what the Piece by Piece show is, which is coming up in June. So keep reading about the library's newsletter. And
Yeah. So,
it's not easy to explain.
well, it's a fun collaborative project that I did when we were on Cape Cod at an art center there, which is basically that you take a painting that we've all familiar with, hopefully, and we divide it into a grid, and we make 12 by 12 squares of each piece of the painting, and we give each square to an artist, and they paint. We show them what their square is supposed to look like, but they can do it in their own style.
They don't know what the whole.
Nobody knows what the whole piece is. They just get their little square, which there might be 60 of them in one big painting. And then everyone hands in their square at the end, and we put it together magically, and they kind of see it all come together, and it turns into this big collaborative painting, it's just a fun little exercise, and it's a good way of, community and working together.
When the idea first came up, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. I couldn't believe we were going to do this.
I
But
know.
it ends up.
She told me I was crazy, but
But it ends up
it's
being
so
really
fun
interesting.
because when it comes together, it's like, it's like the big oh my.
the big unveiling is we have put a sheet over the piece, so nobody, even the artists to this point, have no idea where their little square, what it means, where it fits, what it's part of. And then this big unveiling, and it's this mosaic, and it is a rare kind of manifestation of artists collaborating, which doesn't happen too often.
Well, the trick is that you have to have the edges of your piece match up with the next piece. But what you do in the middle is completely up to you. So it becomes quite creative, and many of the little squares sell.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so it's sort of a fundraiser for the library. So each square is $100, the library gets 50, the artist gets 50. And it's been really successful and just, like I say, a rare.
I remember somebody called me and said, Nina, I bought your square. And I said, what? You did? They were very happy.
Yeah, they stand alone, even though they're part of a big mosaic. Most of them stand alone as artwork that could hang. I think we're time for questions, and they would like questioners to go over there. So, because this is being recorded, and we won't hear it or see the question being asked if you don't stand in front of that microphone and ask a question. Unless either of you want to have a question for each other that you want to kick it off with. You don't have to go over there. You can
Not
just.
one question.
Can we have a shill? Does anybody? Oh, here comes one now. I
No.
think.
Nope, he's
Oh, he's
just
leaving. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Here comes one.
He got out of his chair.
Hi, this question's for Nina. Hi, Miggs and everybody. Nina, since you are all about social commentary, not too much detail, but how is the current political landscape influencing your art?
I didn't understand a word.
How does the political,
How is the current political landscape influencing your art right now, since you're about social commentary?
Wow.
or does it?
I don't think I can answer that. I mean, nobody in my family is speaking to me, so.
That answers
Well, that's a good answer. Okay, so you
Good
need some
answer.
time to think about it. Okay.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a toughie.
Did. Ian, do you have a question for one another? Anything you guys want to ask each other?
Well, Nina and I were talking earlier in the evening, and I found out that you have lived all over the world. And I wonder if you could talk about, where you've lived and how that influenced your artwork, and how did you actually do all your artwork when you were moving around so often from Germany to London to Chile and all different places?
Well, I think I sort of wasn't really taking care of my children so well. I was working in the kitchen and working in my studio. That's an interesting question. I'm just so happy I remembered where my first show was.
There's one other little coincidence or crossing paths, which Nina, when she lived, where did you live? Was it Larchmont, where your house was used for commercials?
Yeah.
And Susan was directed commercials, right?
Produced.
Produced commercials, and you may have used Nina's house, right? This is way before you knew.
I think I was at Nina's house,
Yeah,
yes.
way before you knew.
A couple of times. I had no idea who she was, but we used to shoot in Larchmont a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Well, every time I shot a commercial, I'd get money, and I'd use the money for my daughter's tennis lessons. So there she is, a terrific tennis player as a result.
Yeah.
But
Anybody? Actually, if you shout it out, I'll repeat it because we have to repeat it for the video. Yeah.
Susan, it sounds like you had your breakthrough with finding your way of art after your mother passed away. I'm curious to hear both Nina and Jean. What kind of pushed you to find your breakthrough of your own kind of style? What was it in your life that kind of changed, made you find yourselves to kind of create a very unique style of your own?
Okay, I have to repeat this, sorry, I have to sort of paraphrase that. So what events or pivotal things, moments in your life, provoked a certain, your style? I mean, was there certain events in your life, episodes that?
to me,
Well, you're both going to answer it, yeah. Yeah, turning point or just defined your style. Is there anything?
Okay, I can go.
Did I get that sort of right?
Well, I've been painting since I was a child, and so it evolved slowly over time. But I think that I got into a place sort of in a spiritual world. And so before I was doing the jazz pieces, I did a lot of things having to do with spirits. I have a piece actually in the show at Silvermine that's called Spirits of the House. And these are images of spirits inside the windows. You don't know if they're outside or inside the windows. And the show that I had here in Westport was a lot of that kind of work, where it's very imaginative, fantasy-oriented, and has that spiritual sense of being elusive. And yeah.
Have you ever encountered a spirit form in your?
Well, yes, actually. So we lived in a house in New Canaan, which is this inspiration for Spirits of the House. And there's 3 arched windows that are in the living room that are quite beautiful. And I would walk through there and I would see these 2 women floating in that space. And it would happen frequently. And I thought, you know what, that's actually quite beautiful. I'm going to do a painting of that. So I did, it took a long time, but I did the painting of that. They're floating in front of this window. You can't tell, again, if they're inside or outside. And I just said, well, I'm going to just name it Layla and Genevieve. I named the two ladies. And my neighbor came in and he said, what did you name them? I said, oh, Layla and Genevieve. He said, I didn't know that you knew the two sisters who built this house. I said, no, I didn't know that. I didn't know there were two sisters, and I certainly didn't know their names.
Wow. Okay, well, that's,
What year was the house built?
I would say before 1900. Yeah, it's still there. It's a really cool house. Yeah, I don't know exactly what year.
Susan, do you have a sort of a comparable turning point in your life, a tipping point?
Well, I had talked about that year that I started painting when my mom had
Oh,
died.
yeah. Okay.
And but I think I had wanted to do it for years and years before that, and then that just sort of unleashed it for me.
But it wasn't until you had to quit advertising to get focused on that, right?
I did, because it was like very intense back then, and I was a single parent, and I was traveling a lot, so there was no way I could just carve out a few hours to paint. So.
All right, well, Nina, do you have a final
I'm
word?
not
I'll give you the
exactly
final.
sure what the question was, but I think my work has a lot to do with my life, my marriage, my husband. I think that that's really what drives me, my friendships. Is that,
Yeah, so it's
that an
right. No,
acceptable
I
answer?
think that's helps define what
Yeah.
most artists. It's a dated, momentary thing. You don't know where it's coming from necessarily, but events happen.
Well, at the beginning, I would paint the rooms that I didn't have. So I tried to create the spaces that I wanted and didn't have. And then I was very interested in women's rights. And that bracelet with all the teapots that was pictured there, that was done for somebody whose husband left her, and he was very rich. She tried to get some of his money, and the judge said, well, what did you do to deserve it? She said, I poured the coffee for 20 years. I held the ladder that he climbed. And that was a charm bracelet for Lorna Went, which is in the permanent collection of the New Britain Museum. Anyway, so
Great.
that's all I have
All
to
right.
say.
Well, thank you all. We're out of time. Thanks, these ladies, lovely artists.
Thank you for having me. Wow.